Here's the first part of your story with a unique, dynamic, and gripping approach. It'll make each part long, intense, and unpredictable, filled with sharp confrontations and powerful emotions. I was washing dishes when she said it. Just like that, like she was telling me she'd be home late from work or that we needed more milk. I'm going on a date with my ex tomorrow. The plate in my hand nearly slipped. The sound of the faucet suddenly felt deafening, like the whole world had zoomed in on this one moment. I turned my head, expecting to see some kind of smirk, some twitch of her mouth that said she was messing with me. Emily just stood there, leaning against the counter, scrolling on her phone like she hadn't just detonated a bomb between us. I forced a laugh. "You're joking," she sighed, finally looking up like I was exhausting her. "Why would I joke about that?" I dried my hands on a dish towel, my pulse starting to throb in my temples. "Because you're married. To me. Because it's an insane thing to say." Emily rolled her eyes and pushed off the counter, walking past me into the living room. "It's just Mike. We're catching up." I followed, my steps heavy against the hardwood. "Catching up? Emily, you haven't spoken about this guy in years. And suddenly you need to catch up over dinner like it's a normal Tuesday." She shrugged, flopping onto the couch, still glued to her screen. "Yeah. So?" I exhaled sharply, trying to keep my voice steady. "So you don't just catch up with an ex while you're married. That's not how it works." Emily glanced at me then, just for a second, and something flickered in her expression. Annoyance. Like I was the one making this difficult. "You're being weird," she muttered. I stepped in front of her, blocking her view of the TV she had just turned on. "I'm being weird?" I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You just told your husband you're going on a date with your ex." I'm reacting like any normal person would. She scoffed and tossed her phone onto the coffee table. "It's not a date. You're making it sound like I'm running off to have some secret affair." I studied her. The way she slouched against the cushions. The way her fingers fidgeted with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. She wasn't nervous, she was bored. She had already decided that my feelings didn't matter in this conversation. I swallowed down the sharp sting in my throat. "Emily, I'm asking you not to go." For a brief moment I saw the gears turning in her head. A small flicker of hesitation. It passed in an instant. "I'm going," she said simply. A strange kind of silence stretched between us. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just stared at the person I thought I knew, watching her morph into a stranger right before my eyes. She grabbed her phone again, legs curled up beneath her like we hadn't just ripped something fundamental apart. Like this was just another evening in our house. Like I wasn't standing there, feeling something inside me shift. "Do whatever you want," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. She smirked, shaking her head as she scrolled. I was going too. That should have been the end of it. But Emily didn't realize that when you push someone too far, eventually they push back. And she was about to find out exactly what that felt like. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Emily scrolled on her phone beside me, acting like nothing had happened. At some point, she turned off her screen and rolled over, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. Within minutes, her breathing slowed, deepened. She slept like a baby. Like someone with a clear conscience. I wanted to shake her awake and force her to look at me. To really look at me and see what she had done. But I didn't. I just lay there, feeling something dark coil around my ribs, something that told me this was just the beginning. By morning, she was already up before me, whistling in the kitchen as she made coffee. I got up and followed the smell, finding her leaning against the counter, dressed for work. Her hair was freshly brushed, her makeup carefully applied. Not the rushed, everyday kind, but the extra effort kind. She smiled when she saw me, like we were just another happy couple starting their day. "Morning," she said. I didn't answer. I just grabbed my own mug and poured myself coffee. My hands were steady, my movements controlled. I wasn't going to let her see how much she had rattled me. She glanced at me over her cup. "You're quiet." I took a sip. "You're not." She gave a breathy laugh, shaking her head. "Okay, are we still mad?" I didn't respond. I just looked at her, really looked at her. At the way she avoided my eyes, at the way she tapped her nails against the ceramic of her mug. She had already made her choice. This wasn't some mistake she was going to apologize for. I set my cup down. "I meant what I said last night, Emily. Don't go." Her lips curled into a smirk, small, quick, but I caught it. She liked this. She liked the power of it, the control. "You're not my dad," she said playfully, taking another sip of coffee. I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening against the counter. "No, I'm your husband." She sighed dramatically, setting her mug down and grabbing her purse. I don't get what the big deal is. I told you it's just dinner. It's not just anything. It's about respect. She scoffed, swinging her purse over her shoulder. You're being controlling. You don't own me. I exhaled sharply through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. Control would be telling you that you can't go. I'm asking you not to. Big difference. She looked at me then, something flashing in her eyes. She wanted a fight. I don't need your permission, she said, her voice light but edged with something sharper. And that was it. That was the moment I knew there was no stopping this. She wanted to go. She wanted to see him. Nothing I said would change it. So I just nodded, pushing down the storm inside me. Fine, I said, stepping back. Go. She blinked, clearly expecting more of a reaction. Seriously. I nodded again, sipping my coffee. Yeah, go ahead. Something about my tone made her pause. She hesitated just for a second, scanning my face, trying to read what had changed. But I didn't give her anything. I just turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there, confused. A few minutes later, I heard the front door open and close. She was really doing this. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, debating if I should do what every instinct in my body was screaming at me to do. Follow her, track her, find out exactly where she was going, who she was meeting, if she was lying about all of it. Instead, I made a different choice. I opened our shared phone account. Emily was reckless. She always forgot that everything was linked. Her messages, her calls, her location history, it was all there. And within seconds I found exactly what I was looking for. The messages, the calls, the plans. It wasn't just dinner. It was never just dinner. She had lied. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. All right, Emily. Game on. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the undeniable proof that Emily had just lied straight to my face. Not just a small lie. Not just some innocent omission. A full-scale, deliberate, planned-out deception. The messages told me everything I needed to know. She and Mike had been talking for weeks. There were texts going back a full month, flirty, casual at first, but escalating quickly. Late-night messages. Inside jokes. Talk of how much they had missed each other. And then, just a few days ago, I can't stop thinking about you. Then don't. Come see me. I will. Thursday night. Tonight. The lie burned in my chest like acid. I scrolled through more messages, my stomach twisting tighter with every word. He doesn't suspect anything. He's being annoying about it, but whatever. I'll tell him it's just dinner. Good. I can't wait to see you. I locked my phone and stared at the wall. She had planned this. She had laughed about it with him. She had looked me in the face last night, this morning when I had asked her not to go, knowing full well she was already gone. And yet she had still kissed me goodbye before leaving. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't sad. Not anymore. The sadness had evaporated, boiled away into something else. Something sharper. I stood up, moving on autopilot. I wasn't going to sit here and let this happen. If she wanted to play games, fine. But I wasn't about to play the fool. It took me 10 minutes to get in my car and pull up her location on my phone. She wasn't even trying to hide it. The map showed a little blinking dot moving through the city, heading toward a restaurant downtown. A fancy one. The kind of place we hadn't been to in months. I drove in silence, gripping the wheel, focusing on one thing and one thing only, getting there before she dug herself deeper into this mess. By the time I arrived, I spotted her immediately. She was standing outside the restaurant entrance, smiling at her reflection in the glass doors, adjusting her hair. She looked excited. Nervous even. The way she used to look before our early dates, back when she still cared about impressing me. And then he appeared. Mike. Tall, broad-shouldered, walking up to her with that casual arrogance some guys have, the kind that says they know exactly what they're doing. He grinned and she, God help me, lit up when she saw him. My stomach twisted as I watched her reach out and touch his arm, her fingers lingering just a little too long. That was all I needed to see. I got out of my car and started walking toward them. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy laughing at whatever joke he had made, tucking her hair behind her ear like she was some lovesick teenager. Then, just as they turned toward the restaurant entrance, she caught sight of me. Her entire body stiffened. Her smile dropped. Hey, I said, stopping a few feet away. How's dinner? Emily's face went pale. Mike just frowned, looking between the two of us. Emily grabbed his arm and took a quick step back, like she could somehow put distance between herself and the truth. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice sharp. I let out a short, humorless laugh. That's my question, Emily. She opened her mouth, probably to throw out some excuse, but I held up my phone and turned the screen toward her. The messages. The evidence. Everything. Her face crumpled. Mike, clueless idiot that he was, looked confused. What's going on? I didn't even look at him. My eyes were locked on Emily. Go on, I said, voice calm. Tell him what's going on. She swallowed hard, glancing at Mike, then back at me. I told you it was just dinner. I tilted my head, giving her a slow nod. Right? And is that what you texted him? I tapped the screen. That it's just dinner? Emily clenched her jaw. You went through my phone? You went through her marriage, I shot back. So don't start crying about privacy now. Mike finally seemed to catch up. His eyebrows raised and he took a step away from Emily. Wait, you said you guys were, he stopped himself. Shook his head. Wow. Emily whipped around. Mike, no, seriously, he said, laughing but not in a funny way. You told me you were getting divorced. You said he already knew. I felt like the world tilted under me. My mouth went dry. She what? Emily turned back to me, eyes wide with panic. That's not, he's lying. Mike scoffed. Oh, I'm lying? That's rich coming from you. He looked at me now, shaking his head. Dude, I didn't know she was still with you. I swear. I barely heard him. My ears were ringing, the sounds of the street fading into static. I had come here thinking she was just cheating, that she had made some stupid, selfish mistake. But this? She was already planning the end. She had already decided I wasn't going to be in the picture anymore. She had just forgotten to tell me. My hands clenched into fists, but I forced myself to relax them. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crack. Emily reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Baby, please, don't. My voice was low, steady. Don't you dare touch me. She flinched. I exhaled slowly, then nodded. All right, I said, my voice eerily calm. You want to lie? You want to pretend this is nothing? I stepped back. Fine. Have your dinner. Emily's eyes darted between me and Mike, her panic growing. Wait. No, really? I said, gesturing toward the restaurant. You were so desperate to be here. Don't let me stop you. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't know what to do, because for the first time she wasn't in control anymore. I turned on my heel and walked away, my pulse pounding, my lungs burning. She didn't chase me. She didn't say another word. And somehow that was the part that hurt the most. I drove. I didn't know where I was going and I didn't care. I just needed to move to put space between myself and the wreckage Emily had left in my chest. Streetlights blurred past, the city humming around me, but I barely saw it. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my fingers ached. She had lied. She had lied to me in ways I didn't even think were possible. The cheating was one thing. That alone was enough to split my world apart. But this? Telling another man she was divorcing me? Plotting her escape while I was still sitting at home, oblivious? I had walked into that restaurant thinking I was catching a cheater. Instead, I had walked into a funeral, the death of my marriage, planned behind my back. I pulled into an empty parking lot, barely registering where I was. My heart was pounding, my breathing shallow. I needed to think. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting, hoping, to see Emily's name. Some kind of desperate explanation, a confession. But it wasn't her. It was Mike. I frowned, hesitating for a moment before answering. What? I snapped. There was silence on the other end. A deep breath. Then, look man, I didn't know. I stared at the dashboard, jaw clenched. Yeah. I swear to God, dude. She told me you guys were separated. That the divorce was happening. If I'd known she was still living with you. He let out a slow breath. I wouldn't have touched her. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers to my temple. How long? He hesitated. What? How long has this been going on? My voice was eerily calm. Another pause. 2 months. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. 2 months. 2 months. And all this time she had been coming home, kissing me, eating dinner with me, sleeping next to me. Pretending. I gripped the steering wheel again. Did you sleep with her? Mike was quiet. Too quiet. I felt my stomach drop. Answer me. Yes. A slow, burning rage climbed up my throat. I should have known. Of course, she had. The messages had been bad enough, but I had clung to some desperate, pathetic hope that maybe she hadn't taken it that far yet. But she had. And she hadn't even hesitated. Mike spoke again, his voice lower now. I swear I didn't know, man. And after tonight, I want nothing to do with her. She's a liar. She played us both. I let out a breath, my grip loosening slightly. I didn't like him. I couldn't like him. But I believed him. Yeah, I muttered. She did. There was another silence. Then he said something that surprised me. You gonna let her get away with it? I blinked. What? She's already got a head start, man. She's been planning this longer than you've known. She's probably got her next move lined up. You just caught her a little too early. I stared out at the dark parking lot, my mind churning. I had left her there, standing outside that restaurant with no consequences. No confrontation beyond the moment. And what had she done? Nothing. She hadn't chased after me. She hadn't tried to explain. Because in her mind, she didn't have to. She thought she had already won. I tightened my grip on my phone. No, I said, voice steady. She's not getting away with it. Mike exhaled. Good. I hung up. And then I started planning. I didn't go home that night. I stayed in my car, parked in some random lot, my mind racing. I wasn't going to scream at her. I wasn't going to beg, or cry, or ask for explanations. She had already made her choice. Now it was my turn. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan. And Emily? She had no idea what was coming. I drove home just as the sky was turning pale, the first traces of morning creeping in over the horizon. The whole city still felt asleep, the streets empty, the world quiet in a way that made everything feel unreal, like I had slipped into some alternate version of my life. One where my wife wasn't really my wife, where everything I thought I knew had been rewritten overnight. Emily's car was in the driveway. She was home. Good. I walked into the house, my steps slow, deliberate. The air inside felt different, colder, heavier, like it wasn't really my home anymore. Just a place where lies had been whispered and secrets had been planted, waiting to bloom. She was in the kitchen, standing by the sink with a glass of water in her hand. She looked up when she saw me, her face unreadable. But her eyes flickered with something I recognized immediately. Guilt. Not sadness. Not regret. Just the dull, quiet panic of someone who had been caught and didn't know how to talk their way out of it yet. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, arms crossed. Have a good dinner? She swallowed, setting the glass down carefully like she thought one wrong move would set me off. I didn't, don't lie, I cut her off, my voice sharper than I expected. We're past that, aren't we? Emily flinched but recovered quickly. She straightened her spine, tilting her chin up slightly. I don't know what you want me to say. I let out a humorless laugh. You don't. She didn't answer. Just folded her arms over her chest, her expression hardening. Like I was the one putting her in an uncomfortable situation. Like I was the one being unfair. All right, I said, pushing off the door and stepping toward her. Let's start simple. You lied to me. She exhaled sharply, rolling her eyes. You went through my phone. I barked out a laugh. Oh, that's what we're focusing on? That's your defense? Not the fact that you were sneaking around, not the fact that you told some other guy we were divorcing, not the fact that you cheated. I didn't cheat. The sheer audacity of the words stopped me cold. I stared at her, stunned for a second, before my lips curled into something bitter. You didn't cheat? I repeated slowly. Emily squared her shoulders, suddenly defensive. I never slept with him. I inhaled sharply through my nose, trying to control the storm inside me. Oh, so that's the line? That's what you're clinging to. Her silence was answer enough. You told him we were divorcing, I said, my voice dangerously low. You planned a future with him while I was still here, still thinking we were happy. You lied to me. You went behind my back. You kissed him. She looked away, but I wasn't done. You let him think I was already gone. My voice cracked slightly, and I hated myself for it. Like I was nothing. Like I was already out of your life and you were just waiting for me to realize it. Emily swallowed but didn't speak. And that's when I knew. She wasn't going to apologize. She wasn't going to cry or beg or say she had made a mistake. She had chosen this. My stomach twisted, something hollow and ugly spreading in my chest. I had spent the entire night convincing myself that maybe, just maybe, there was some sliver of humanity left in her. Some part of her that had regretted this, that had been scared to lose me. But she wasn't scared. She had already made peace with it. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I just nodded slowly. All right. Emily finally looked at me again, something uncertain flickering in her eyes. All right? I gave her a tight-lipped smile. Yeah. All right. And then I walked past her, straight to her bedroom. Emily turned, frowning. Where are you going? I didn't answer. I just opened the closet, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing. The sound of the zipper was louder than it should have been in the silence. Emily stepped into the doorway, watching as I grabbed shirts, jeans, shoes, moving with a quiet efficiency that scared even me. What are you doing? She asked again, her voice sharper this time. I didn't stop. What does it look like? Her arms crossed. You're being dramatic. I zipped up the bag, throwing it over my shoulder before finally turning to face her. No, Emily. You were dramatic. You played this whole thing out like I was too stupid to figure it out. Like I was just supposed to sit here while you set up your next relationship behind my back. She scoffed. I wasn't, you were, I said, stepping closer, my voice steady. And I'm not sticking around to watch it happen. For the first time, she faltered. I saw it in the way her mouth parted slightly, the way she shifted her weight. She had expected a fight. Yelling, anger, maybe even some desperate attempt to win her back. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected me to walk away first. You're really leaving? She asked. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, Emily. I am. She studied me, her eyes flicking between mine, searching for something. Maybe hesitation. Maybe a sign that she could still control the outcome. She didn't find it. Instead, I just walked past her. And she let me. She didn't reach for me. She didn't stop me. She just stood there as I walked out of the bedroom, through the house, and out the front door. I didn't look back. Because there was nothing left to see. Emily was waiting for me. I knew it before I even pulled into the driveway. She hadn't gone to work. She had spent the whole night in our house, probably pacing, probably running through every possible scenario in her head. Trying to figure out how much I knew. Trying to decide how she was going to play this. I parked but didn't get out right away. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, watching the house. The blinds in the living room shifted slightly. She was looking out. Checking. Good. Let her sweat. After a minute, I stepped out of the car, grabbed my bag, and walked inside like I wasn't carrying the knowledge of her betrayal like a knife in my chest. The second I opened the door, she was there, standing in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, still in the clothes she had worn last night. She hadn't even changed, hadn't slept. She looked tired and nervous. Where were you? She asked, her voice sharp but uncertain. I shut the door behind me, dropped my bag onto the floor, and met her gaze. Out. Her jaw tightened. All night. I shrugged, walking past her into the kitchen. Yep. Emily turned, following me. Are you serious right now? I opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and took my time unscrewing the cap. Then I finally looked at her. Are you? A flicker of guilt crossed her face, but she buried it fast. I was trying to call you, she said. You didn't answer. I took a long sip of water, then set the bottle down on the counter. Guess now you know how that feels. Her eyes flashed. Are you just gonna act like a child now? I let out a breathy laugh, shaking my head. That's rich. Coming from the woman who threw a tantrum when I asked her not to cheat on me. Emily's nostrils flared. I didn't cheat on you. I cocked my head, staring at her. Really? Her lips pressed into a thin line. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, scrolled to the messages, and held the screen up between us. She didn't even look. Instead, she huffed out a humorless laugh and shook her head. So you went through my phone? Real healthy. Babe. Unbelievable. I let my arm drop, exhaling slowly. Emily, do you hear yourself? She threw her hands up. What do you want me to say? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I want the truth. Her mouth opened, but I saw the hesitation in her eyes. The calculations. The choices. She wasn't about to come clean. She was deciding which lie to use next. I watched her, waiting, giving her the chance to be honest for once in her miserable, deceitful life. And then she said it. It was just dinner. That was it. That was the moment I felt everything inside me snap into place. I had spent all night waiting, wondering if she would at least have the decency to own up to it. To tell me the truth. But she wouldn't. And if she wouldn't admit it, then she didn't deserve a second chance. She didn't deserve me. I pocketed my phone and nodded. All right. Her arms dropped slightly like she had expected me to yell, to argue, to give her something to work with. But I didn't. I turned and walked right past her, heading for the bedroom. She spun around. What are you doing? Packing. Emily's face twisted. Oh, come on. Really? I ignored her, pulling open drawers, grabbing clothes, stuffing them into my bag. She marched in after me, her voice rising. This is stupid, she snapped. You're acting like a husband who just found out his wife has been lying to him for months? I said coolly, tossing a handful of shirts into my bag. Yeah, weird. Huh. Emily groaned in frustration. I told you it wasn't. Do not finish that sentence. My voice was sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. Don't you dare lie to my face again. She shut her mouth. I zipped up my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and turned to face her. Her arms were crossed tight over her chest now, her face red with anger. Not regret. Anger. Not because she had cheated. Not because she had hurt me, but because she was losing control of the situation. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. You know what the worst part is? She didn't answer. I let out a hollow laugh. I wasn't even gonna leave you. That got her attention. For the first time, her expression changed. I was gonna forgive you, I admitted, the words bitter on my tongue. I was ready to let it go. I was stupid enough to think that maybe this was just a mistake. But you couldn't even tell me the truth. Emily's jaw tightened, her eyes flicking toward the floor. I took a slow step forward. You weren't sorry about what you did. You were just sorry that I caught you. She flinched. I nodded to myself, adjusting the strap on my shoulder. I hope Mike was worth it. Her eyes snapped up to mine, her nostrils flaring. Oh my God, I don't even care about Mike. I arched a brow. That's funny. Because last night you sure seemed. She slapped me. Hard. The sound echoed through the room, sharp and ugly. For a second, everything froze. I could hear my own breathing. I could feel the sting on my cheek, spreading like wildfire. Emily's chest rose and fell, her hands shaking at her sides. She was furious. Not heartbroken. Not desperate for me to stay. Just mad. I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head. There she is. Her eyes widened slightly, just for a second. The real you, I said, my voice soft but cutting. The one that doesn't give a damn about anyone but herself. Her lips parted like she was about to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked past her. Out of the bedroom. Down the hall. To the front door. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't say another word. And when the door clicked shut behind me, I knew she never would. I drove without thinking. I didn't have a plan. Didn't have a destination. Just me, the road, and the weight of everything Emily had shattered. The slap still burned on my cheek, but I didn't care. In fact, I was glad she had done it. Because if there was ever a moment where she might have convinced me to stay, that was the one that killed it. That slap wasn't regret. It wasn't heartbreak. It was her lashing out because she lost. And the worst part? She hadn't even tried to stop me from leaving. I reached a red light and gripped the wheel, exhaling slowly. The weight of it all was finally settling in. I was homeless now. Not in the literal sense. I had money, I could stay somewhere. But I no longer had a home. My house was no longer mine. My wife was no longer mine. The life I had built was no longer mine. All because Emily had decided she wanted more. And she had thrown me away in the process. The light turned green, and I drove on, my mind racing. Where the hell was I supposed to go now? I ended up at a hotel. Not a fancy one, not some trashy motel either, just a forgettable, generic room with beige walls and a bed that smelled like industrial-grade laundry detergent. It didn't matter. I wasn't here to be comfortable. I threw my bag onto the chair and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. No messages. No missed calls. Nothing from Emily. I swallowed hard, rolling my shoulders. What was I expecting? That she'd suddenly grow a conscience? That she'd text me, begging me to come back? Apologizing for everything? No, she wasn't going to. She had been ready for me to leave. She had been planning it for months. I was the only idiot who had thought we still had something worth saving. I ran a hand down my face, then opened my phone and did the one thing I should have done the second I walked out of that house. I blocked her number. A sharp, final click. It was done. Then I opened our shared bank account. Because if she thought she was walking away from this unscathed, she was dead wrong. Emily had been careless, reckless. She had planned her escape, sure, but she had assumed I wouldn't catch on. And because of that, she had left doors open, doors I could now walk through. We had a joint account, one that had a lot of money in it. Half of it was mine. Legally, I had every right to take my share. So I did. With a few clicks, I transferred exactly half of the balance into my personal account. Not a cent more, not a cent less. I wasn't about to give her any ammunition to call me a thief. The moment the transfer was confirmed, I felt something shift. For the first time since I had read those messages, since I had watched her standing outside that restaurant, glowing for another man, I felt in control again. She had made her moves in secret. I was making mine right in front of her face. And the best part? She wouldn't even know it until she checked the account herself. I sat back against the headboard, phone still in my hand, staring at the screen. It still hurt. Even after all this, after everything she had done, it still hurt. But at least now I wasn't just sitting in that pain. I was doing something about it. I had lost my wife, my home, my marriage, but I wasn't going to lose everything. And Emily was about to find that out the hard way. I didn't expect her to notice right away. Emily wasn't exactly a financial genius. She had always treated our bank account like a limitless pit of money, swiping her card without ever checking the balance. But eventually, at some point today or tomorrow, she would have to look. And when she did, she was going to find half of it gone. My half. I leaned back against the cheap hotel pillows, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't revenge, not really. I wasn't trying to ruin her financially. But she had spent months making plans behind my back, moving through her life like she was the only one who mattered. Now she was going to learn exactly what it felt like to lose something. I checked my phone. Still no messages. I had blocked her number, but she knew my email. She had my social media. If she really wanted to reach me, she could. But she hadn't. That told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't sitting at home regretting what she'd done. She was probably relieved. I could picture it perfectly. Emily, curled up on the couch, texting Mike, telling him I had left, that she was finally free. She had spent months preparing for this moment. I bet she felt like she had won. I exhaled sharply, running a hand over my face. Let her think that, for now. By noon, I was restless, sitting in a hotel room, waiting for her to realize what I'd done. It wasn't enough. I needed something else, something concrete. So I drove. Not home. Not anywhere near Emily. I drove to a lawyer's office. Because if she had already planned our divorce, I was going to make damn sure it was on my terms, not hers. The receptionist looked up when I walked in, offering a polite smile. Do you have an appointment? No, I admitted, adjusting my bag strap over my shoulder. But I need a divorce lawyer. Her smile didn't even flicker. She had probably heard those words 1,000 times. All right, let me see if anyone is available. A few minutes later, I was sitting across from a man in his late 50s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, flipping through a yellow legal pad. His nameplate read Daniel Foster, attorney at law. So, he said, tapping his pen against the pad. Tell me what's going on. I inhaled through my nose, exhaled slowly. Then I told him. Everything. The months of secrecy. The texts. The restaurant. The lies. I didn't sugarcoat anything. Foster listened carefully, nodding every so often. When I was finished, he leaned back in his chair, studying me. Well, he said finally, you've already done something smart by transferring your half of the money. Keeps things clean. I nodded. I didn't take a cent more than what's legally mine. That's good, he said, jotting something down. Judges don't like financial surprises. The cleaner the division, the easier the process. I drummed my fingers against my knee. I don't want to fight. I just want this over with. Foster tilted his head slightly. Does she know you're filing? No, I admitted. Not yet. His lips quirked up slightly. Well, that'll be an interesting surprise for her. I let out a breath. Yeah, it will. Foster straightened his papers, then met my eyes. All right, if you want this to go smoothly, we'll get the paperwork started today. If she's cooperative, you could be free in a few months. Free. The word settled in my chest. Unfamiliar but right. I nodded. Do it. By the time I left the office, I felt lighter. Emily thought she had control over this situation. Thought she could manipulate her way into the perfect breakup, with me as the heartbroken, helpless idiot who just accepted it. But now she was about to find out just how wrong she was. I sat in my car, hands on the wheel, debating my next move. I could go back to the hotel, wait for the inevitable explosion when she checked her bank account. Or, I smirked, pulling out my phone and scrolling through my contacts. I had someone else I needed to talk to first. Someone who deserved to know exactly who Emily really was. I found the name. Mike. I hit call. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Hello. He sounded confused. Cautious. Hey, Mike. I said, voice calm. Got a minute? Silence. Then, what do you want? I leaned back in my seat, staring out at the city. Just thought you'd like to know. Emily and I aren't getting divorced. Another silence. Then, incredulously, what? I grinned. Yeah, funny, right? She told you we were, but I just left a lawyer's office. I'm the one filing. She had no idea. Mike exhaled sharply. Jesus Christ. Oh, and another fun fact, I continued. She doesn't have access to my money anymore. Took my half, left her with hers. So if she was planning on using me to keep her lifestyle while she ran off with you, well, she's in for a bad time. Mike let out a dry, bitter laugh. Goddamn. I smirked. Still think she's worth it? There was a long pause. Then quietly, No, I chuckled. Figured. Another pause. Then he sighed. Look, man. I don't know what to say. I didn't know she was lying about you. I didn't know any of this. I believe you, I admitted. But you were still with her. You still helped her lie. He was silent. I let the moment stretch, then sighed. Listen. Do whatever you want with her. Stay, leave, whatever. But I figured you deserved to know exactly who you're dealing with. Mike exhaled again, muttering something under his breath. Then, louder, yeah. Thanks for the warning. I smirked. No problem. Then I hung up. And just like that, Emily's world started to crack. I didn't hear from Emily for the rest of the day. Not a single call. Not a single text. Nothing. I knew exactly why. She had checked the bank account. She had seen half of it gone. She had realized in that moment that the man she thought was still under her thumb had just flipped the whole game on her. She was scrambling. Panicking. Probably trying to figure out what to do next, who to call, how to spin this. Good. Let her suffer for a while. I spent the afternoon getting my affairs in order. I booked a longer stay at the hotel, talked to my lawyer again, made sure every financial tie between us was being severed as quickly as possible. I wasn't just leaving Emily, I was erasing her from my life. And then, right as the sun was setting, my phone rang. Emily. I stared at the screen for a long moment. I had blocked her number, but she must have used another phone. Probably a work phone or a friend's. For a second, I debated ignoring it, letting her scream into the void, knowing she had lost all access to me. But then I thought, no. Let's see what she has to say. I answered. Silence at first. Just heavy breathing on the other end. Then, in a low, shaky voice, what the hell did you do? I smiled. Leaned back in my chair. Hey, babe. Miss me? Her breathing hitched like she was trying to control herself. Don't play games with me, Daniel. Daniel. Not babe, not honey. Daniel. That was new. I chuckled. Why so tense? Something wrong. You took my money, she snapped. No. I corrected, my voice calm. I took my money. Half of it, to be exact. The half that legally belongs to me. Her frustration was nearly vibrating through the phone. You can't just do that. Pretty sure I just did. She made a sharp, furious sound, like she wanted to scream but couldn't. Jesus Christ, Daniel, you're being such a... Careful, I warned. Think about your next words real hard. She fell silent. I waited. Then, after a few seconds, she exhaled. I don't know why you're doing this. I raised my eyebrows. You don't. She groaned. I mean, why are you being so spiteful? You're making this harder than it has to be. I actually laughed. A full, genuine laugh. Oh, that's rich, Emily. I'm making it harder? You planned this for months. You were already halfway out the door before I even knew something was wrong. You lied to me. You told another man we were divorcing before you even mentioned it to me. She scoffed. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. Silence. I nodded to myself. Yeah, that's what I thought. She exhaled again, quieter this time. Okay, fine. Maybe I handled things wrong. Wrong, I repeated, amused. Emily, this wasn't a miscommunication. You didn't just handle it wrong. You cheated. You betrayed me. You threw me away like I was nothing. And now that I'm not sitting around like a broken little puppy, you're mad. She was breathing harder now, like she was struggling to keep herself in check. I just don't understand why you're doing this. I smiled. Because, sweetheart, you thought you had all the power in this. You thought you could take your time, set things up exactly the way you wanted, and I just roll over and let it happen. She didn't respond. I leaned forward slightly. You were wrong. More silence. Then, after a long moment, her voice softened. We don't have to do this, Daniel. I smirked. There it was. The shift in strategy. She had realized anger wouldn't work, so now she was trying something else. What do you mean? I asked, playing along. I mean, this doesn't have to be ugly, she said, her voice almost sweet now. We had something good once. We don't have to end it like this. I let out a slow breath. Wow. What? She asked carefully. I'm just amazed, I said, shaking my head. That you really think I'm that stupid. She stiffened. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I chuckled. Emily, you already ended it like this. You did that the second you crawled into bed with someone else. You chose to make it ugly. She was quiet again. I sighed. You know what? I'm done with this conversation. I don't know why I even picked up. Her voice sharpened again. Wait. No, I cut in. I don't want to hear it. You made your bed, Emily. Now lie in it. Without me. She made a frustrated noise. So that's it? You're just walking away. I smiled. You wanted me to walk away, remember? Silence. I nodded. Yeah, that's what I thought. And then I hung up, blocked the number, and for the first time in months, I felt free. I expected her to call back. Even though I had blocked her number, I knew Emily. She was persistent when she wanted something. She'd find another phone, another way. She wasn't the type to accept losing, not without a fight. But hours passed. Then an entire night. Nothing. No texts. No emails. No showing up at my hotel door, begging me to talk. It was like she had disappeared. At first, I didn't know how to feel about it. Part of me expected some dramatic last-ditch effort to get me back. Some crocodile tears or a fake apology when she realized she had really lost me. But no, she had made her choice, and I had finally made mine. The next morning, I woke up feeling light. It was strange. My body was exhausted. My brain was running on fumes. But there was something different in my chest, like I could finally breathe. I got up, took a shower, and stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. I looked different. Not in an obvious way, not in a way anyone else would notice, but I saw it. My eyes weren't tired from second-guessing myself anymore. My shoulders weren't weighed down by the constant what-ifs. I was free, and that freedom came with a new realization. Emily wasn't my problem anymore. For the first time in 6 years, I didn't have to worry about what she was thinking, what she was doing, what she wanted. She had spent months planning her life without me. Now it was my turn to do the same. By noon, I was sitting in my lawyer's office again. Foster raised an eyebrow when I walked in. That was fast. I smiled. Yeah, I don't like wasting time. He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. All right, what's the plan? I placed my hands on the desk, exhaling slowly. I want this done as quickly as possible. I don't want to drag it out. No arguments, no fighting over assets. She can keep the house, I don't want it. Foster nodded, jotting something down. You sure about that? You've got every right to, I'm sure. I leaned back. I don't need a place that's full of her. She wanted it? She can have it. I'll start fresh. Foster studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right, I'll get the paperwork finalized. If she doesn't contest anything, you'll be legally divorced in a few months. Divorced? The word didn't sting like I thought it would. It felt like relief. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room, scrolling through my phone. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking at Emily's social media, wasn't wondering where she was, what she was doing, who she was with. It didn't matter anymore. I had spent so much time trying to make our marriage work, trying to understand her, trying to hold onto something that had been rotting from the inside. Now, I was done trying. I opened a blank note on my phone and typed 3 words. What's next? It was a question I hadn't allowed myself to ask before. For so long, my entire future had been wrapped around Emily, her decisions, her needs, her life. Now, for the first time in years, I had no idea where I was going. And for the first time in years, that didn't scare me. It excited me. I smiled to myself, locked my phone, and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, I'd start figuring it out. But tonight, I'd enjoy the silence. The peace. The feeling of finally being free.